Next is theoretical orientation and training. Let's take a look at this. One is theoretical orientation. Every program has faculty who have different theoretical orientations. The program itself may not have a theoretical orientation. They may have just faculty from multiple different perspectives, but usually programs have a general focus. So for example, at SMU, our general focus would be cognitive behavioral. That would be the primary one. Now there's other things that are worked on, but they're all within the cognitive behavioral framework. And most of our faculty, when we hire them, are going to be from one of those frameworks. But other schools have completely different ones. Some are purely psychodynamic. Think of psychodynamic as psychoanalytic or Freudian, okay? Maybe neo-Freudian that they're coming at. Some are humanistic, okay? So that's Carl Rogers, right? Person-centered. So they may come from different ones of these approaches, and it needs to be something that you're comfortable with. Now, I want to suggest to you that if you're not sure or too sure, you might want to go someplace that has lots of different models. I say not sure because then you get to explore a lot of them. If you're too sure, go explore some of the other models. I think that one of the things that happened when I went off to graduate school is I was trained cognitive behavioral and behavioral, and I went to a pretty behavioral school. And that fit with me well, still does to some degree. But as I went into my internship and I learned a lot about systems work, and that's family systems, okay? And then I went on into training afterwards, and I got a lot more experience in postmodern work, narrative therapy, solution-focused therapy. And I must admit, I'm sad that I missed some of that early on. I still hold behavioral and cognitive behavioral near and dear in many respects, but these other approaches really kind of opened up the possibilities for me to really begin to conceptualize differently. So think about that when you're going on, but you do have to feel comfortable with it. If I had gone to a program that was pure psychodynamic, I would not have felt comfortable with that. That would have been the antithesis to all my training and kind of the way that I process information. So it wouldn't have been the best fit for me. Wouldn't have been bad to learn, and I got some of that on internship. In fact, I got quite a bit on internship, but it would have been great to have some of that, but not the major portion of my training. So think about that as you're going out. The other ones are the training orientation model and the training relationship model. The training orientation model for me is talking about how are we approaching this? The traditional way in psychology was the scientist practitioner. This was originally called the Boulder model. It came from Boulder, Colorado. It was a conference that was being done there. And they came up with the scientist practitioner model. And it said, for psychologists, you're a scientist first and a practitioner second. So you first were a scientist, you learned how to do research, and then you would apply that in practice. Later on came the third one on here, the practitioner scholar model. And that's where the PsyD comes from. And the practitioner scholar model said that, well, you're a practitioner. We're training you to be a practitioner, a clinician, but you should be a scholar as well. You should know all the research. You should have read up on it and be fully informed, but you didn't have to do the research yourself. And that's kind of the PsyD model came from. More recently, we have the clinical scientist model here. And the clinical scientist model is the one that is cropped up because a lot of people were concerned, in psychology specifically, that we were becoming too practitioner oriented, and they wanted to get back to the scientist roots. So the clinical scientist roots are kind of slightly more extreme scientist practitioners, scientist, then practitioner kind of deal. So those are heavy duty research. And while they promote themselves as doing a fair amount of clinical work, it's not nearly as much as it would be in the practitioner model. The final model is the practitioner model down here. And the practitioner model says that you're a practitioner. That's it. That's your primary thing. Not that you shouldn't be a scholar too, but it's really, really heavily focused on practice. All of these, if you go into an academic program of any kind, are going to be at least a scholar, right? So practitioner scholar is pretty common amongst a lot of them to some degree, with practitioner just being the more extreme version of that, and clinical scientist being the more extreme version of the scientist practitioner. to think about it. All programs, even if it's counseling or social work or whatever, have some, they may call them something different, but they're all some variation of these four. And you got to decide, what are you most comfortable with? What is it that you would like to do? Finally, I've got down here the training relationship model. The training relationship model has to do with, when you go in there, what kind of training am I going to get, and how does the program look at it? There's the mentor-mentee model, which is that you're going to have a mentor, and that mentor is going to follow you all the way through. There's the kind where you go in and you actually are assigned to a lab, a researcher that you're going to work with. And in fact, when you're accepted into the program, you're accepted by that program. You can often go to the website of the program, and as you're looking at the faculty, they'll sometimes have on the website accepting new students. Well, oftentimes what that means is that they are in a mentor-mentee model. They are looking at it as, I'm accepting a student. So when you get accepted, you're accepted to be in my lab, and you are going to be working with me. Now, there's some advantages to that. One of them is you're selected by, and you're working with one person predominantly. And you are going to get that person to help you step your way through your program. And if you've got a good mentor, they will help you get good internships, help you get good jobs. They'll connect you up really, really well. The downside is, what if you don't like your mentor? And you don't know when you get in there until you've worked with them for a while, and you find that you don't like them very much. Boy, that can be tough, because now you're kind of stuck with them. Now, some are light mentor-mentees. And when I say a light mentor-mentee, what that means is that you work predominantly with one, but you actually spend a lot of time in other ones. And that mentor is your go-to person, but they're not the only person, or not even the 75% person, or even the 50% person. They're just the one that you always go back to. That allows a lot more flexibility, even if you don't get along with them very well. And if they're really good, they're still there for you to help you do all those things. So think about that and ask about that model. The multiple mentors, meaning you don't have any particular mentor, and you work in a lot of different places. What'll happen is you'll be accepted into a program, but not to work with a specific person. But you may be assigned later on to somebody, with the understanding that that may change and may be very fluid. In that case, you still almost always still have a mentor of some sort. There's somebody who's like an advisor for you, who's the person you go back to, but it's usually not quite as formal as that. And again, there are pros and cons to all of these. That doesn't give you somebody as close to work with, but it can give you a lot of people. It requires a lot more management on your time to make sure that you get appropriate training across lots of different people, and that enough people know you well enough. When we start talking about knowing you well enough, especially letters of recommendation, most people end up in situations where they're not known well enough. And that can be one of the problems with the multiple mentors model.